Okay, I think we're live again. Thank you for your patience. We had some technical difficulties we were dealing with, and we're still resolving the last parts of those right now. So give us a few seconds, and we will be right back with you. Just want to send the link out to these students so that they can get it and get right back into class. This is health class, phase 1, Ministry of Health, Aboriginal Republic of North America. This particular class is for sign-up students, but we do it live, online, so that people can get an idea of the type of information that we discuss. The whole health course has the underpinning of assisting indigenous peoples who have been impacted by colonization, who have lost their food supplies, basically, traditional medicines, traditional diagnostic methods, methodologies to deal with health in the human body. They've been interrupted, and we are facing genocidal things that are happening surrounding nutrition, surrounding how we deal with said medical industries and a number of other things. So the design of this class is to provide an opportunity to produce the workers, the doctors, the naturopaths, the herbalists, the various groups of people that we will need to assist us at functionally getting back on point. Let's make sure this is right. All right. Getting back on point with being healthy again. All right. And in order to do that, we have a number of things that we have to do. All right. Give me one moment while I get something to the students just to make sure everybody is online. I don't want anybody to miss this class. All right, so today we're going to go over our first reading, homework assignments, lab, and we're going to go into anatomy, physiology, and what we call biological pathology, or in a better sense, black biology. And it's all under the guise of the subject of, let's make sure we share this to all the students. All right, one moment. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I have to send this last email out so people can get on this live link. All right. Okay. So if you're a student and you're tuned in, you should be able to pretty much get right back on and see what we're doing. All right. All right. All right. Okay. Let's go back. All right, so what we're going to do now is jump right into the manual, then we're going to do a PowerPoint, then we're going to come to closure and talk about the lab, and then if there are any questions, then the students can ask those questions right inside of the Hangout in the comment section, and we'll answer those questions, and then we're going to be done, and of course have homework that will be due next week, and look forward to class number 2. All right, so let's do this, do a little screen share here. Okay, so what we're bringing up right now is our actual textbook for the level 1 certification as an Indigenous doctor. This class takes approximately 8 to 10 weeks to finish this particular level, and see if we can get that shared. All right, and you're going to learn a lot, a whole lot, and it's going to press you. It's going to be very challenging. All right, just in the sense of work and making sure things are done properly. All right, so let me slide that over just a little bit. All right, so this is our manual and textbook. We're going to go right to the second page. Hopefully everybody can see that. No, it's kind of small. All right, let's make it a little bigger. There we go. All right, so this is our table of contents, and we're going to kind of scroll up. This is our table of contents. And our work for the day. Now, this book is constructed so that you have to take the video classes and webinars in order to function through it. It's not just a standard open a book and read a type of book. The curriculum information for homework assignment number 1 starts on page 46, and you're going to read up to page 70 where you'll find your first homework assignment. The first part of the book is dedicated towards assisting us at looking at things that we need as far as herbology and a good preface to understanding biocosmology and what we're talking about with black biology and things that we need as far as plant life, non-hybrid, or excuse me, non-genetically mutated plant life. All right, original plant life, natural plant life that is symbiotic with our genetic makeup, our energetic makeup. All right, so that's the first part, and we'll come and breeze over that as we're going through these pages. But your actual homework assignment is on page 70. I'm going to go to that, and you're required to read pages 46 through 69 in order to understand that and look at this video. All right. All right, so let's see if we can get through this. And go to page 70. I want to take a look at page 70 so you can see what is there. Got our Black Seed dedication. All right. There's lots of stuff here. Actually, let's just use this so we can get there a little faster. All right. Over 30 pages of recipes to help you with putting together some things that will help your clients later. All right, here we go. All right, so we have some vocabulary words here, as you can see. The vocabulary will be answered here today. You can use dictionaries, you can use some Wikipedia searches, you can get some basic ideas of what everything is that we're talking about, but the foundational defining explanations will come from your textbook and from these particular live classes. So we want that focus to be there, so when we check in homework, that's what we'll be looking for. All right. And in the second part, you have to do a lab where you test for phototropic versus heterotropic foods. You're going to learn what those words mean in just a second. And the idea is we have a cadre of experimentations that each student has done since we started this years ago, where we don't have to guess about what will happen biologically when we put certain foods inside of our bodies. And having the best functioning of classification of foods. I mean, there are certain foods that people think are vegetables, which are fruits, and certain foods that are fruits that people think are vegetables. All right, and there's certain forms in which foods are in that are not safe, and there are other forms that are more safe. Example would be if you want to eat some broccoli. Broccoli is actually a fruit. All right, the stem that you're eating is the vegetative part of the plant if you eat the whole stem, but those little green things that you see at the tip, those are seeds. And those particular seeds are usually left in an unripened state. So when they're ripe, you'll notice that they turn a purple color. All right? And that is when you're supposed to eat broccoli. All right? Or that particular form of broccoli. All right? That's when you're supposed to eat it. Not when it's green. And when you eat it when it's green, the nitrogenous content is so high and it has not converted itself into the proper levels of carbon and glucose. The chemistry is not there, and therefore, as you're going to learn in this class, it can be not as healthy for you. All right. So these are small things. We need to know a little bit about observation of food in order to and use of food, utility of food, in order to know how to help people at a later date, the indigenous people who need to be treated, who might have a problem, and how to give out sound, tested advice about nutrition. All right. Often people are just online and they're doing a whole bunch of things and they don't have any case studies. And if they do, the case studies are all controlled by parties that have a socio-political interest against the people who are reading them. All right. Founded that way. So we created this as a unique health jurisdiction so that we could solve this problem. So page 70 goes through those particular things, and we're going to come back to some things in the manual after we go through this PowerPoint. So let's See if we can go back and switch this up. Get back to my Hangout. All right, give me a moment. Okay. We'll come back to the homework manual in just a second because we got a lot of vocabulary words there. All right, so let's see if we can pick up one of these presentations. Hopefully this slideshow can be seen once I get it up. Give me a moment. Okay. All right, so hopefully you can see this. Make this a little bit bigger. Hopefully that's big enough. Too big. All right, so I don't want that to be too small. So let's see what we can do with this. All right. Try now. There we go. All right, so check us out because we're going to start this PowerPoint and we want the focus of all the students to be right on because we're going to go through a lot of information and we're going to do it at a certain pace. So you are going to have to go back and watch this video. This video will be available for you to watch right after it at the same link, and you can go back and look at the vocabulary words in the lab and the concepts and get it. Our class, health class, is a unique class because of the type of material that we're covering. All right, let's see if we can pull this down a little bit. So let's go right into it. All right, the course Aboriginal Biocosmology deals with two aspects which feed each other. Cosmobiology and biocosmology are the same thing, but we're using the context of the words in the order and chronology that they're in order to get you to ground yourself in this concept. All right, so let's read directly off the slide. All right, Aboriginal cosmobiology is an indigenous health diagnostic and treatment modality for indigenous peoples. In this process, the birth chart of an Aboriginal or indigenous person is used to measure the anatomical, physiological condition of the 12 systems of the Aboriginal body and the psychosocial state and condition of the 12 areas of Aboriginal psychosociology. There are 12 areas. We'll go over that in class. The Aboriginal naturopath will then implement a treatment modality for the psychosocial needs and the biochemical needs of the client. All right? And if that sounds like some gibberish to you as we go, it's going to be clear to you because we're going to define everything. Aboriginal biocosmology works in reverse. In this methodology, basically from the ground up, we measure the state of the teeth, astrodenition, the face, roshology, the hands, dermatoglyphics, the head, capology, the muscle testing. We're not going to do kinesiology here. Blood type analysis, hematology, to give a diagnostic of those systems and the impact of the destabilization of the system or tissues on the cosmos. Now, this is where we get biofeedback. The body and the earth has a biofeedback mechanism with everything around it. And if we can prove there's shareable energy, we can prove that there's impact. All right? But we have to be decisive about those things. So heaven affects earth and earth affects heaven. Really simple. But at the core of this class is understanding the progression to the human body as a natural cosmological, cosmogonical cycle in this universe. All right? So essentially you have the progression which we've described before from the substance that is being called dark matter and dark energy. I stress being called, all right, because we have older names for it, indigenous names. But the substances that are being called dark matter and dark energy that progress into what we know to be gas clouds and then stars, that progress further into what we call planets, that progress towards organisms on that planet in the form of plants, animals, and what we're calling humans. That is a natural cosmological cycle. It's not evolution. All right? It is an intelligent design from an intelligent mind or operating mechanism, whatever word you want to use so we don't spook you out. But we're going to prove that point so that we can prove there are laws to the human body that if you violate them, you must pay, because it's based on an intelligent design. Not intelligent design necessarily all the way by which that term has been used and trademarked, but intelligent design meaning a superior, a supreme intelligence and force that has given rise to everything that we see, that is present. That's important. And it goes into scientific models, which we're about to discuss. So let's take a look at the universe, or a scalar model of the universe based on redshift theory. I stress theory. Redshift theory is a theory that deals with cosmic microwave background radiation. And that particular theory presupposes that we can measure things based on the movement of waves, or our calculated experimentation, where we are saying that a certain wave formation is present, whether it be red or blue or somewhere in between. All right, so we're dealing with the electromagnetic spectrum, and we're dealing with trying to see things that we can't see with the eye, and in some ways we can't see with a telescope, but we have sensitive material that can pick up on energy, and therefore we presuppose that we live in this giant magnetic field called the universe, which is a good supposition. I'll go with that thesis because we have enough to back it up outside of what we've been taught by Europeans. But the unified field theory asked the question, what's holding it all together? And Albert Einstein spent his life studying dark matter and dark energy as the fabric of space itself, as a substance that has the gravitational power and pressure to hold solar systems, stars, etc., these things together. All right? So that's great. But there are other theories that have thwarted and made science problematic, all the way down to understanding the human body, because you have to incorporate these sciences to understand why the body is naturally black, why we are discussing the most important biochemical, the melanotropic peptide, melanin, melanosomes, melanocytes, melanin stimulating hormone, all of this about the human body, which is the natural form and what is unnatural in biological classifications amongst said humans. And why? All right? So we're looking at following our progressions properly. So in order to understand the human body, you must understand the universe and the environment that the human body is within. Otherwise, you're going to make a mistake, like scientists are making, where their theories are just bleeding over into other theories, and because they can't prove through observable phenomena that these things exist, they use confidence games with you, because they have the equipment and they can measure, and you don't. So you must listen to the scientists. Yet we can show through the simplistic observations of nature, with some technical aspects to it too, that you can do the same thing, and even more resourcefully and with more utility, because the utility of this discussion is being lost in technical jargon. We're talking about the universe, and then we're associated with the body. Why is that an important discussion anyway? It has something to do with black people on this planet, and why other biological pathologies, i.e. races, associate with you psychologically, which is energetically, sociologically, which is energetically, economically, which is energetically, like they do in all these ways. There is a scientific underpinning to all of it, an expressive underpinning that can be measured by formulas. All right? So this is your universe, and your universe is not filled with hundreds and thousands of galaxies. There's only one observable galaxy in this universe that can be seen. The others are all theoretical science based on redshift and blue shift cosmic microwave background radiation theories that never been proven. There are no telescopes seeing other galaxies. That's important to understand. All right. So you can look at the Milky Way. I mean, you can literally see bands within the Milky Way. This is the Sagittarius band right here. But you can see the bands that exist, and we exist inside of this particular, what we're calling galaxy. But what is unique is that the latest data, because we can see the galaxy that we're in and see parts of it, the latest data tells us that the Milky Way not only has a core, which has been known for decades, but there's a black hole there, and it's astounding all astrophysicists because it's doing something in physics that's supposed to be impossible. Right? And as we get to what it is doing, how it is doing what it's doing, then we come right back to this melanin and discussing it in another way. Because the melanin has been shut down. All right, in your bodies, literally, and we have to turn the switch back on. But we have to understand. So this is an article, just a simple article, June 6, 2014. The Milky Way glimmers over New Hampshire Farm Museum. All right, so they're showing you a band from the Milky Way. You can see the bands in the Milky Way in the sky. There's several. All right. Milky Way's giant black hole to eat space cloud in 2013. So that's already happened. You swallowed up. Now, how is it that at the center of this Milky Way, you have over 16 plus immediate stars and many more circambulating around empty space that is being called a black hole? And now, because this particular gas cloud ventured itself too close to this area of gravitation, it is being swallowed up. But let us ask a question. Where is it going? Where, meaning spatial dimensions. If something is being swallowed up by something, it should be. If you swallow some water, it's going into your esophagus and traveling down digestive tract and going other places and being absorbed into tissue structures. That's observable. How is it that a whole gas cloud that's many, many times the size of several suns is being sucked up into a nothing? In physics, the discussion on this is being called the singularity, and it is within astrophysics, physics, and it is within quantum physics. And the question becomes, when an object approaches what we are calling a black hole, because we don't know if it's a hole or not, we just theoretically calling it that. Not we, them. We know what it is. When an object is approaching a said black hole, that black hole at the center has what we call infinite gravitation. Infinite gravitation, which means nothing, a star, a planet, nothing can resist its gravitation, and it can literally swallow up things that we see that are huge like a sun and this gas cloud or whatever else comes close to it, and they're gone forever. Gone where? So the discussion on dimensions in this universe, and in the sense of infinite gravitation, we're talking about more force than anything that has a magnetic field and matter to it. So at this point, space, time, and matter all become conjunct into a big said nothing. And the only thing that we can see is black space. Now, for those of you who have never taken a physics class, black, the color, has the highest level of attenuation power. Attenuation meaning absorption. So you learned in school Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, as the basic seen spectrum, and then you go into unseen spectrum. But that seen spectrum is subject to that said unseen, because the unseen has greater attenuation power or force. So space has two qualities. Its gravitation is infinite and it's black. which means it's eternal and black. Those are its two qualities. And when you go to the middle of this Milky Way galaxy at the Sagittarius A portal, you have an infinite power that's making everything in the known and seen and detected universe move. So there is a supreme force that's making everything move. And it can be identified astronomically. Now, our ancestors already did this. They're late. These people are late. And we can prove it. We're going to prove that in the debate when we go a few weeks from now. And that's an important point to prove. Because science has a God. Science has a God where that God is the primordial force of science and is completely beyond the ability to explain, except for some of the things that we're talking about today. All right. So we have that, but I wanted to qualify my discussion because the attenuation power of things that are black has its origins in what we call in dark matter or dark energy. In religion, we'll call it God. Black and infinite. That's important. Astrophysics has a God. All right, so fact check. Here's a little fact check. We're going to go over some things. Carl Jansky, a radio astronomer, was the first to detect radio wave signals coming from the Sagittarius A section of the center of the Milky Way, which we were just looking at. So there's radio waves emanating stronger from that point than any other point in the known universe. And we know what a radio wave signal is. It's forms of communication. All right, signaling through waves. All right. So by charting hydrogen irradiation, we have a method used to calculate the shape and size of the Milky Way. All right, a generic ability to do that. Through the Very Long Base Radio Array Telescope, we are allowed for the checking of the radiation from stars in, I should say 3D, 3 dimensions, and how that radiation shifts over time. So you have stars being born, all right, they're giving off radiation, and those stars are moving, and everything is moving. So by detecting the movement and the shift of that radiation, we can detect the size or the generic calculated approximate size of the Milky Way. All right? So that's phenomenal to be able to begin to have those processes that we can prove things that have long been proven, but we can prove them. So let's take a look at it. So we have the galactic core, and we have arms that are protruding that we can see from Earth from our Milky Way. And we have the center of the Milky Way, where we have this force that's moving all things. So we're dealing with motion, and we're dealing with force, which has everything to do with the body, the human body. All right? So we have to lay that cosmological background so that we can come into the bioanatomy. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the things that that are important today. All right. So here are some volumes of books. If you can afford them, get them. They cost $1,500, and they are studies on melanin carried out by people who don't have melanin. For what purpose? For commercial, industrial, scientific applications. All right. And we can read it. Volume 1, the source, synthesis, chemistry, secretion, circulation, and metabolism of melanin, or the melanotropic peptides. All right. Biological roles in humans, animals, and plants. Volume 3, mechanisms of action and biomedical applications. What is it going to be used for? How can we sell this stuff? Are we selling it? If so, to who? Who has the most? Can we shut it down? Can we open it? When we say shut it down, meaning if it has certain functions and those functions grow from atomic, molecular, to tissue-based, to organ-based, and those organs do something different when they're filled with it, what do? What are the biological roles? And can we change those biological roles? Biochemically, sociologically, psychologically, affecting the brain. Those are all questions that are being looked at. So we need to look at it. All right. So we have this melanin heritage, And we need to know why we have this stuff in our body, because we have it, and it's being used by other people. It's being used in organ regeneration companies. It's being used by artificial intelligence companies. And we need to know why we have this hue. The reason why we have this hue is because we have a covenant with the earth, with the solar system, and with the designer and force and power that gave rise to this universe, that we're supposed to be here on this earth forever. We have the signature to be an eternal people. Anybody that does not have this, or weakened or mutated forms of it, are not to be here forever, and only came by way of the law of accident. That's important. So our people historically have a fascination with what we are calling melanin, a complete fascination. And they painted themselves green and black, or they merged the two and had a blue-black illuminating color in their text, in their statues, in their paintings. Why? Very simply, the green represents copper and the black represents carbon. And when you bring copper and carbon together and you put them in motion, in cycles, you produce electricity and magnetic fields. So they are the biological forms that retain the magnetic and electrical energy states of the electromagnetic spectrum in biological life forms. All right. Melanin is carbon compounds with other minerals placed together that congregate inside of a cell, producing a melanosome, the cell being called a melanocyte. And by receiving melanin-stimulating hormone from the pituitary gland produced in the brain, we are able to have the genesis of turning on that melanosome, melanotropic peptides, and we can build, regenerate, and maintain cell structure with that functioning from a proper environment, nutrition, sunlight, proper air, water, and food base. We are able to produce the brain chemistry through melanin stimulating hormone to be secreted into our lymphatic and blood system and given to our cells so that those cells can build a little carbon double pyramid bond, which I'm going to show through X-ray diffraction, double pyramid bond villages called melanosomes, and physical ribosomal and other structures inside of the cell. Our bodies are not protein-based, they are carboxylic acid-based, melanotropic peptide-based bodies if we have this hue and this genetic lineage, and spiritual lineage, energetic lineage. So our people had a fascination with studying these things. All right. So the war is on the black seed. Here I'm holding in my hand a black watermelon seed. Watermelon being one of the greatest foods that you can put inside your body for nutrition. Yet, there's a problem. There are some watermelons that have been mutated and hybridized so that they have white seeds. Or there's some that have no seeds at all. Just like there's some black people or pale people. All right? There are people who don't have seeds. They're impotent. Nature has a flow to it. And there's always indicators to tell us whether something is healthy or not. If you want to eat a watermelon, eat one with black seeds. Otherwise, the seed has been compromised. Therefore, the tissue matrix of the particular plant and fruit has been compromised. So there is a psychological, sociological, historical war on the concept of the greatness of the biopathology of blackness. It's there. It's present. It was incorporated into religion. It's been incorporated into every system that you can think of that were from a non-indigenous people. And those non-indigenous peoples, we're going to identify what they are scientifically so we can help ourselves. All right? So let's go. We show you the physical statues and other things. Let's go to like some text. Here's a Quranic text. Uniquely, our ancestors who put this particular book together put it together based on the oral, physical transmissions of history, epigraphical histories, and other histories that were part of their prior lineages. All right. Maybe that's why they want to make Islam a terroristic religion, because it's hiding something. But here you have the discussion on the Creator creating humanity. And the words that are given are wa laqad khalaqna al-insana min salsalin min hama masnun. And certainly, laqad, we formed or we created, khalaqna, human beings, al-insana, from salsalin, all right? Min hama masnun, from an illuminating black substance. Now the word masnun comes from the word sana, which means bright or brilliant. You can go get any dictionary on Afro-Asiatic languages, the one that we call Gharibi or Giz, which is being mistermed Arabic, as if it's from Arabs. So the word sana means to illuminate or make brighten, and masnun is one who is illuminating. And illuminating one. Hama is black. Salsaline is the lineage, the ingredients, the elements. So here we have the Creator saying that that human beings were created as illuminating from an illuminating black substance. And that illuminating black substance is the photovoltaic carbon compounds that make up the melanosomes and the melanotropic peptides that are inside of the body. And the sociological phenomena at the time, socio-political phenomena, was that the Sassanids and the Byzantines or Romans were ruling, and they had Aryanized the systems of popular education so that white had become equated with divinity. So these Saracens, or Umayyad, who later became black Muslims, all right, these people changed the backdrop of history by destroying the Roman and Sassanid systems of popular education and making it cool to be black again from their constitution, which is what we call the Quran. So now we have it in literature that's closer to us, and we have it farther away. Then we have it in nature. So nature is communicating to us. Historical ancestors are communicating to us. Closer ancestors are communicating to us. What are they communicating? They're communicating something very spiritual, very sensible, very scientific, very human. Protect yourself. Because you come from a power that's unbreakable. And if you live according to those laws, which we're about to go into, you are unbreakable. But you are being distracted by science or pseudoscience. Dr. Harold Saxton Burr wrote this book, which he called at the time The Fields of Life, which has been retitled to The Blueprint for Immortality. And for over 40 years, he measured the electrical and magnetic fields of organisms and people and life forms and plants, and proved that the sun, the moon, the orbs around us have impact on the electrical operations within all of these organisms, and they follow certain patterns. He also discovered that biological life forms have something that he titled ELV fields. ELV fields are electromagnetic field formations that exist in the morphological shape of the entity that's coming into existence. So you think about the shape of a frog. Well, when the frog is just conceived inside of its mother, it's not in that shape yet, that physical shape. Yet, Dr. Harold Saxton Burr was able to test the ovums and see that that particular field morphology was already present, which means the shape of the frog is already there. It's just like a very non-dense magnetic field cup. and the cellular structure of the frog just pours itself into this morphological shape. The same thing happens with human beings, trees, which means that they are energetic fields that are the catalyst causation point of the generation of the physical body, and therefore, as you'll see, the degeneration. So when your magnetic field strength is depleting, you're subject to some things. If it's being maintained, you're fine. If it's being increased, you're fine. So the same things or principles we'll find that's holding the universe together or holding you together, and it has something to do with the substance and the situation power called melanin. And it goes to the very core of the human soul and spirit, which are scientific terms that describe how you breathe and how you interact with the sun. Whether you're aerobic or not, and whether you are a solar-based being, also known as phototropic. So here's your chart. Here's your food. You want to know what to eat? Here we go. This is nature's measurement. Not pseudo measurement. This is nature's measurement. All right? This is nature's measurement. And what does nature's measurement say? Nature's measurement says that if you're not eating these things, you're going to have a problem. So all human beings need sunlight. All human beings need sunlight. Any said human being that is allergic to the sun is not a human being. There's something else. Allergic to the sun will be further qualified by the studies of Europeans, because they admit on record that they're allergic to the sun, which means they're anti-solar people. So now think about this. In the progressions of cosmogonical and cosmological science, every orb was born from that gas cloud that became a star called the sun. All of them. And since we're on Earth, we fall into that category. That means everything that is on the Earth is supposed to have a reciprocal relationship with that sun from which it was born. So if you're on the planet and you're an anti-solar being, that means you did not come with the universe and the principles and laws and the chemistry and all things that make it a life-giving design. You did not come from the intelligent design. You did not come from the creator. You did not come from the supreme force in this universe that gave rise to all of these things. Because if the sun don't like you, the creator of the sun don't like you. So at what point is the sun going to get arrested for being racist? I like to see that. That's not going to happen. Atmosphere, air, oxygen. Dr. Otto Warburg, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in the 1920s for cellular physiology, stated that if you want to create a cancerous cell, take away the cell's oxygen. So what about this big steak that you're eating? How much oxygen is in that? Or the big stack of cheese that you have on that nice burger? Or the bread that's filled with yeast and fungus? How much oxygen is in that? And if it's not oxygen, why are you eating anaerobic foods? Are you an anaerobic being? Since the breath gives rise to the heart pumping and the power for the brain to function, the air, pretty powerful. So what are we doing eating anaerobic foods? If cancerous cells can be shown through microscopic viewing to be pale, without hue, with no melanin, a sporous fungal operation that is driven through by mitosis, which is cellular cloning, no oxygen, anaerobic basically, that means disease comes by way of a lack of oxygen. And we're going to show you that the melanotropic peptide is built upon the concepts of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen being present in carboxylic acids. All right. So there are groups of people who are anaerobic. Giant fungus is walking around. Next we have water, the element of life. All right. What happens when the body gets higher levels of alcohol through fermentation? Fermentation being the process by which a fluid is created in the form of ammonia or alcohol. That means there's something in the structure of the very tissue down to the molecular and atomic state that is not arranged properly. It's like having a nice pyramid built. It's been there for thousands of years, as opposed to a old sheetrock house that has no fractal operations to it, no self-similarity with anything in the universe. When we built structures, we built them to be symbiotic with the environment, to cater to proper energy flow and proper energy presence. How we live now is quite different. Commercialization, because there's a lead party that's driving all of this. Next we have fruits, which are the quintessential fuel for the body. Cells only burn glucose. I'm going to say it again. Cells only use glucose as a form of energy. Minerals are not energy. They're used for structural building of tissues. So you want to know why your energy levels are depleting so fast? Because you're not eating the substance that will give you the self-similarity all the way down to the molecular and atomic and tissue scale to produce a geometry that will accentuate the proper force, which means give you energy. Vegetables are for building, fruits are for energy. That's your diet. Anything else is a joke. So that is your food. And at the core is your thoughts, your thought processes, which has a biofeedback with any of these. People doing solar bathing usually aren't trying to go out and murder anybody. Those two don't go together, except in defense of that which is naturally theirs. All right. So we have our phototroph and heterotroph. The phototroph is the natural being on the planet, signified by visible combustion factor, as founded by the Aboriginal Medical Association. Visible combustion factor being a factor that can be seen evidently and presently via the skin of the person, which is indicative of what is going on in the brain and the inner parts of the body that we don't see. And that is that the carbon levels are at their proper state, congregating in the cells to accentuate force from the sun, from the air, from the water, from the nutrition, and from God. A walking, talking God is a phototroph. And we juxtapose that to this guy over here, heterotroph, who's a hybrid, clone DNA, temporal, ungodly, by nature. So we need to look at that. White folks are walking spores, which means they're walking parasites, which means their particular operation says that they must live off things that are dying. And if they can live off you, you're dying. You're fermenting. You're decaying. You're not in the natural order of things. If you're in the natural order of things, which means you're self-sustainable. You are self-sustainable. You have sustained your emotions. You have sustained your passions. You still have fun, but you know how to plan, organize, and structure because you are from that intelligent design. You are from that supreme force. You are attenuating that supreme force. You are the walking, living expression of that supreme power, which now can be identified astronomically to de-spook you. All right, so we have our phototropic model. Phototropic model is a solar symbiotic organism in a natural. Heterotrophs are anti-solar, anaerobic by nature, anti-hydrous, hydrophobic, preferring ammonium and alcohol-based fluid environments, right? And pure cannibals. So when we go back to our tree, we can see them. Anti-solar, anaerobic, hydrophobic, and cannibals versus phototropic, aerobic, water-based, fruit and vegetarians. I think we know what's going on here. So when someone comes to me, we deal with something called real bodybuilding. And our clients come in and they say, oh, my pancreas is messed up. And we say, sure. The pancreas is an organ. It's in a system. All right? Called the exocrine system. It's made of tissues and cells. So if your organ is messed up, of course the tissues and the cells are a little messed up, then we can keep going smaller to show that the disease exists in a more, we're leading to something, I could say, in our discussion. So if the disease is in the cells, then it's also in the genes and the amino acids and the nucleotides and smaller parts. That means there's also problems with the structure and energy flow on the molecular and atomic level, and subatomic. And then we just walk our way right into the pure consciousness, the thought, which gives rise to the behavior of the organism. And we say every physical disease is corresponded to a mental disease, a mental lacking. So that's important. Real bodybuilding tells us all physical diseases correspond to mental diseases. All right, that's important. So what is melanin? Melanin is carbon compounds. This is a theoretical model of what X-ray diffraction would show how carbon forms in tissues that we call nucleotides that make up these little gene structures. And it is hexagonal, octahedral. Hexagonal, 6 angles, octahedral, 8 sides. In formation in tissues, which means it's forming 2 pyramids, which is what we build. We build pyramids on the lower level, we build pyramids on the upper level. And this is our little village. And the more carbons come together and coagulate, which means more pyramids come together, we get more force to come into the body. We are literally absorbing God. You ever had the Holy Ghost? Live by biocosmology and you get it all the time. All right, so we got it. Carbons come together, carbon compounds, and they make up this stuff that we're calling melanosomes. And it's stimulated from some hormonal things from the brain that are turning on certain receptors and creating this black illuminating substance. Shiny, brilliant, resplendent, beautiful. It's intelligent. That makes it run faster than everybody, jump higher, sing better, create and invent better. It's tied to an infinite source. And it has the proper geometry, structure. You ever heard of the sign or the saying, I'm in good shape? In order to be in good shape, you have to be in good shape atomically, molecularly, all the way down on these smaller areas. Thus Plato and all these other folk came up with these theories. Where did they get that from? Well, first of all, Plato never existed, so we know where they got it from. Stolen medieval Renaissance information from you know where and you know who. The solids are the formations of how the body forms itself in tissues to retain order and frequency, magnetic energy. All right. And we're going to learn a little later that we have a particle called the magneton that we are calling the atom right now, mistakenly. So here we go again, elements in geometry. When we have these elements together, they produce this beautiful plant on the left. All right. And we call that plant burdock with these little spiny flowers. And you can take that burdock and all the iron that your blood needs, that iron is in a certain geometrical shape in tissues to allow it to potentiate a certain energy. So iron helps with specific things, copper helps with specific things, zinc helps with specific things, and all of that is based on shape, formation, and attenuation power, which means we're studying magnetics and electricity as it pertains to biological formations, which means that the burdock is going to help you because it's in good shape. And you're in good shape too, by nature, because your body is a universe. And each one of the 12 systems, with the 13th system being the crown, what Harold Sexton Burke called the L-body, work together. So we have the nervous system, endocrine, lung, lymphatic and immune, circulatory, digestive, excretory, reproductive, muscular, skeletal, meridian, and integumentary. All 12 of these systems have a flowing magnetic field that unites them, and depending on the force of that magnetic field and the state of the geometry of the on the atomic and molecular level of the tissues that they are eating from in the forms of fruits and vegetables, if they're sane, if not, the flesh, which is non-geometrical on those levels, non-attenuating, dead. You have a lot of fermentation and death going on. So the body is a small universe, and we need to respect that. Because if we can respect that, we can respect that when Jupiter is in a certain position, it's going to affect the body in a certain way and the mind. When the sun is in a certain position, it's going to give off a wave, a radio wave transmission to the earth, and that radio wave transmission will be absorbed by the people on it, and it will give rise to a behavior. Or a behavioral opportunity that will be carried out by that individual depending on how they interact with that energy. So the world is a bunch of formulas. So here we have again our little Milky Way. Everything in it with specificity in your local solar system is impacting you. So we made something called the 5 components and the 5 conditions as a methodology to read birth charts. So that if you never have to see the client physically, you can tell everything that's going to go on inside of their body by looking at their birth chart. What inherited strengths they had, what inherited weaknesses they had. So you're going to use this, not in the first assignment, but you're going to use it later as you're looking at these particular things. All right? So, we have it from history. This is from the Coffin Text, Utterance 306. Atum, who created what exists, who is the Lord of all things, the Lord of all, the Lord of everything, the Lord of life, the origin of all the forces and elements of nature. So James Allen states, his name is a form of the verb tum, same root for time, all right, in Adam. Probably a noun of action, meaning both complete, finish. Indeed, Adam completes creation without belonging to the created order. Sounds familiar. So we have it there, the discussion on atom, and then we have an English word, atom. An atom. So what do we have here? In the original people on this planet, we have a difference in formation and atomic structure. First of all, we have a particle that's being called an atom, which is really magnetons. The new word that we give to atoms are magnetons. Why? Because we are going to give the geometrical structure and the functional structure back to the atom and not measure based on a false model that does not apply to us. It does apply to some people, but not all people. So, in our Aboriginal physics, the magneton, or the atom, has a positive and negative pole, just like the Earth, the Sun, and everything else in the known universe. And that positive and negative pole has a spin shift that releases these fine, small, little things that we call magnetons. So the atom is basically a vortex to bring things into existence and for things to go out of existence in some ways, if it's that time. Now, if the atoms are in what's called blue shift, we'll use that term and we're going to change what that means. Blue shift means that the waves are getting more dense. They're condensing more force. Red shift is long wave. The waves are getting weaker. Blue shift implies the attenuation of force, and in order to attenuate force, you have to have the right structure. So a non-polar atom doesn't have the right structure. It's red shifting, which means it's dying, because it lost its polarity. It's dying. And the organism will look pink. Who has it? So go from a spore to a fungus to a white person. We used to call them Akmar, red, Desretu, red. The devil is red with a pitchfork. Neptune, which represents deception. So we know how to measure these particular things. All right. The atom in Aboriginal physics is the magneton. It is a magnet with two different polarities with the ability to attenuate the force from which it came, which we're calling dark matter or dark energy. The fabric of space. That black infinite stuff. Molecules are compounds of atomic structures that are bringing these polarities together in groups to attenuate more force, build more intelligence, so that the organism can construct itself into tissue formations. And then we just keep going on, and we can build the whole body up, organism by organism. So we also have something called pH, which is percentage of hydrogen ions. Two types of hydrogen ions, said electrons and protons, or negative and positive. All right, so the body fluctuates in pH as needed for performance of physiological processes. During the day, the Aboriginal body is necessarily alkaline, and at night, necessarily acid. So the acid-alkaline model does not mean anything. It's confusing because we need certain things that are acid inside of our body, and we need certain things that are alkaline. What we do need is phototropic. An example of this is ammonia, and ammonium and histamines from white blood cells are alkaline, but they're using ammonium as the basis for that alkalinity, which means the hydrogen ions are there, but there's no carbon or oxygen in ammonia. NH4. It's nitrogen and hydrogen bound together. Where's the oxygen? No oxygen around the nitrogen, and you get nitrite fermentation. Nitrite fermentation is the bedrock of biological decay, fermentation, aging. This is simple. All right. Fermentation is the process by which small spores, funguses, and yeast cause the decay in the tissue matrix of another organism that they have invaded, and they produce alcohol, ammonium as fluid environments to produce a pH that is conducive for their survival and cannibalizing of that particular organism. That's what's happening. And they like to eat dead melanin and dead red blood cells. So we got to keep the melanocyte, which is the cell holding the carbon chains. Melanin receptors, all right, which are placed on and into the cell from the MHC that comes from the brain. Melanin stimulating hormone, all right, coming from the brain, from the pineal to the hypothalamus and the pituitary, secreted into the blood and lymphatic system. A neurohormone, all right. It is important to know that the gonadotropin releasing hormone cycle, GnRH, controls the melanin production, the pituitary gland, and the 3 glands in the brain, hypothalamus, pineal, and pituitary, with a specification on the pituitary, controls the operation that deals with gender and melanin. Check that out. I want to say that again slow. Those glands control and stabilize whether you're a man or a woman and melanin. The 2 most important things on the planet. Being original people and stabilizing man and woman that makes us immortal. But what we found is that the gonadotropin releasing hormone cycle and the neurons from it develop in the neural crest of the nose coming from the air, oxygen, which is only a condensed form of photonic energy. So the sun is feeding you that which stabilizes you as an eternal race of people via the ability to stay men and women, to procreate, based on being phototropic entities. This is heavy. You are the people of the sun, the people of the Creator, following a hybridized form and set of laws to carry you to your demise. Effects of a superpotent melanotropic peptide in combination with solar UV radiation on tanning of the skin in human volunteers. Here we go. You're going to tell on yourself. What are you going to tell? The 13 amino acid peptide binds to MC1R to induce cyclic AMP-mediated signal transduction. Basically, a brain hormone coming to create some type of signal, leading to the synthesis of melanin polymers from dopa precursors from the brain. 2 types of melanin can be expressed in humans. I disagree with this point, but I know he's using the language. The brownish black melanin, not pigment, eumelanin, is believed to convey protection from the sun damage. Now, it's not conveying protection, it's solar symbiotic. It's saying protection like the sun is bad. We need to be protected from it. It's going to hurt us. The big sun that's giving everything else's life on the earth is going to hurt us. We need protection. No, the brownish black eumelanin is the only melanin, whereas the reddish sulfur-containing pigment pheomelanin is often expressed in light-skinned individuals who report poor tanning and burning in response to sunlight. There is burning that takes place. It's called cancer cells, melanoma. So you can read on. Notice they say sulfur containing. There's a project right now to block out the sunlight. And what is being used in Great Britain and America? Sulfur aerosols to block out the sunlight. Who wants to block out the sunlight? Who has projects to block out the sunlight? Who could conceive the thought to block out the sunlight? Why are you blocking out the sunlight? That's our food. You got to know it. So we got the phototrophic, heterotrophic behavior. All right, Fritz Albert Pop. who was a biophysicist at the University of Marburg in Germany, found something called photo repair. And in the photo repair, Pop discovered that at 380 nanometers, cancer and carcinogenic substance could not sustain their damaging effects. The German Cancer Research Center invited him to speak before 15 of the world's leading cancer specialists during an 8-day conference on all aspects of cancer. The group questioned him on one thing: how could a body produce light at 380 nanometer waves? Wow. In order to do that, the body would have to be blue shifting. It had to be blue-black. These people knew what he was talking about was not for them. We can see the nanometers. So you hit 380, you're going into that violet, blue, black color, the natural color. All right, so here we have the mitochondria. We're going to phase off into the cell. The cell being the most basic structured unit to hold all of its organelles to function to create tissues, organs, and systems and maintain the vitality of the body. Inside of each cell is the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the engine that participates in ATP, adenyl triphosphate. It is just the energetic cycle in the body. But it only wants to do one thing: burn carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And that's it, in the form of what we know to be glucose. In order to have fermentation, the phototropic state of the cell must be altered, which means the body must be below 380 nanometers of vibration or cycles per second. 380 nanometers is beyond the speed of the seen light spectrum, which means that beings without a soul or sun are subject to disease. Now, I need us to understand that our bodies have the ability to function properly if we have the right information. We will have to have in the future a concerted effort to darken the race. Why? Because that is the natural state of the life forms on this planet. 100% health is that they are illuminatingly black. That's it. Now, we have presupposed that mitochondria are the natural energy cycle of the cell. But we have also presupposed that mitochondrial DNA in some of its formations is very damaging because there is a non-indigenous structure that's giving rise to it by invading the body. That's a long discussion, but suffice it to say, there's your mitochondria and it spins in order to burn that glucose. All right. So we've talked about a number of these things, and we want to move on to some functions. I think I have the wrong PowerPoint. All right. What we have here is cellular mitosis. I do want to talk about this. Cellular mitosis is taught to us in biology as the natural process by which a cell duplicates itself. And that's false. Mitosis is the process by which a cell is under cellular stress, and in that cellular stress, in order to attempt to continue to exist, it makes a copy of itself. All right. Let's see. Okay, so we know that this is a cloning process. There's a whole other process to how we build tissues. And these mitotic divisions are what cause telocentric, acrocentric, and other breaks, which you'll read in your first chapter, which cause mutations. And mutations are like taking a bunch of pyramids and hitting them with a sledgehammer and expecting them to still be functional, structural, etc. They're not. The energy flows aren't the same. So we have a problem. Here we have a spore generating itself through mitosis and meiosis. Chromosome. The chromosomes are tightly packed carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen based coils in the center of the cell, and those coils are not in this X formation. They're in a ladder formation, L-A-D-D-E-R, a ladder, and coiled around each other. And at the center, you have something called a centromere. The centromere is a communication arm, which is a magnetic and electrical ground point. You split at the centromere, you create damage. So these particular chromosomes, chromosome being genetic material that has a sequence, geometry, and energy flow. I'll say that again. Sequence, geometry, and energy flow. The sequence being how structures are ordered in progression. The construction and the geometry and the shape are these shapes conducive to attenuation of power? Right? And the electrical flows and magnetic flows come after that, because if they are not mutating and breaking with telocentric, acrocentric, and other breaks, that means they're maintaining a certain level of force that's holding them together through nutrition, proper water, proper volumes of oxygen in the body, and proper sunlight, and the proper culture that produces the proper thoughts. But we have these walking funguses, diazotrophs, which are bacteria and archaea that fix atmospheric nitrogen gas into a more usable form, such as ammonia. And thus you have the nitrogen fixation cycle. And these diazotrophs, the nitrogenase generated ammonia is assimilated into glutamate through the glutamate synthase pathway. That's in the brain. Enzymes responsible for nitrogenase action are very susceptible to destruction by oxygen. Many bacteria cease production of the enzyme in the presence of oxygen. So these funguses can't live with oxygen around. You need to understand that. And if oxygen is a natural substance, one of the four that we mentioned on our tree, what you're doing, not liking the sun, now not liking oxygen. When oxygen is around, you can't live. That means you're cancer. Otto Warburg already told you that. You are a cancer. Nitrogen as a gas comes from hybrid plants. It is breathed in through the neural crest and is converted to glutamate in a low oxygen, hypoxia based body. You got the oxygen, you can neutralize the nitrogen. All right, nitrate reduction, aka denitrification, is a microbially facilitated process of nitrate reduction that ultimately produces molecular nitrogen through a series of intermediate gaseous nitrogen oxide products. This respiratory process reduces oxidized forms of nitrogen in response to the oxidation of an electron donor, such as organic matter. The preferred nitrogen electron acceptors, in order of most to least thermodynamically favorable, include nitrate, nitrite, nitric oxide, nitrous oxide, finally resulting in the production of dinitrogen. Completing the nitrogen cycle. The process is performed primarily by heterotrophic bacteria, such as Paracoccus denitrificans and various pseudomonads. Here they go. Heterotrophic bacteria all over you. All right. Not going to go over that. But we can go over where these people come from. A part of it. The Geomagnetic Field and Life by A.P. Dubrov costs over $270. And what it does is it studies extinction level event points, the magnetic field on Earth, and see how it is affecting life forms on the planet. Good study. Raising the bar. All right. What I found is that by studying the geomagnetic field, we can find certain points in history where there were certain cataclysms, and those certain cataclysms caused via earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, shifts in the polar ice caps, blocking out of the sun in some areas on the planet, caused groups of original people to degenerate. All right. And inside of that, what we have is pure live examples. 75,000 years ago in Sumatra, Indonesia, you had the largest volcanic eruption in recordable Earth history. And that eruption blocked out the sun in this part of the planet, which is the home of the rhesus monkey, the cousin of these hybrids, which is talked about not only in the literature, but is displayed in the geological record. And talked about in other literature. The Quran calls them the Qirada, the monkey people. In the Ramayana epic, they're called the Vanara. In science, they're called Lucy. Hominids who are deformed, mutated versions of original stocks of humans. We did not originate from monkeys through any types of natural selection or primates or have a common ancestor. No, the monkeys all come from humans. Primates. Their large levels of hirsutism and excessive hair growth are a sign of what happened to them. All right. So on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, VEI, on a range of 0 to 8, Lake Toba volcano was an 8, largest in Earth history. And the volcanoes in that area emitted sulfur gas into the atmosphere that blocked out the sun, and it gave white people their sulfur-based anatomies. Because now it's in your tissues and you cannot hide. They are heterotrophic entities. They will prey on society until we have a scientific underpinning and we stop mixing with them and we preserve the original templates. This is not eugenics, this is science. Your symbolic Babel book tells you that certain races are not supposed to mix with others. It was a watered down version of the original, which is what I'm talking about right now. The super eruption of Toba, did it cause a bottleneck? Bottleneck meaning bottleneck in human society where most of the people die and you have small groups that survive and populate or repopulate. The super eruption of Toba has been closely linked to a peak in sulfur dioxide in the GISP ice core. So they took mining operations, went down into the cores of ice and found that the sulfur dioxide levels peaked at certain points. They're saying, what happened during this point? What was going on? It has been proposed that the impact on the world's climate caused the eruption of Toba was considerable. Ice core data show that the weather was cooler for several centuries after the Toba eruption, possibly due to the large amount of stratospheric sulfur aerosol ejected by the volcano. And following that, increased albedo. Rampino estimated that the worldwide temperatures were 3 to 5 degrees cooler and down to 15 degrees cooler in high latitudes for several years. Sulfur amino acid metabolism in the developing rhesus monkey brain. Subcellular studies of taurine, cysteine, sulfonic, that's an amino acid, decarboxylase, gamma aminobutyric acid, and glutamic and decarboxylase. That's in the rhesus monkey. Studies being done on the sulfur compounds in the rhesus monkey. All right, that's the study right there for the National Institute of Health. Sulfur relay system of the rhesus monkey brain. All right, let's see if we can get to this. Hopefully y'all can still see this. Yep. All right. So these are not a joke. The Venara exist in literature. So they exist in real form, they exist in literature, and the environmental cataclysms that were present gave rise to them. Now the literature says that these things were a curse, right? We're not going to say yay or nay on that. We're just going to say that the literature matches the geological record, matches the anatomical record of these particular beings that people are finding. And the catalysts in the difference between the original stock on this planet and the mutations show that sulfur and nitrogen play a big part. The Venaras took birth in monkeys, attaining the shape and valor of the gods and goddesses who created them. Here's a living depiction of it. You want to talk about hominids walking around, Australopithecus afarensis and all of that? Our folk depicted these particular things. All right. The Venara carrying Grono Mountain, Chonojiri Mountain. All right, I just wanted to show you that these things are real. All right, you see them all over the planet, literally. All right, so we have blood, and what we have found something very interesting. Dr. Kishe Morishita did his PhD studies in Japan in the 30s, and what he found is that the blood is made in the intestines from the food that you eat. Here, small intestines, absorbed into the villi, and it becomes red blood cells. We found that the liver is the promoter of the food paste in the plant cells to fully develop into red blood cells and then regenerate parts of the body. So literally, you are what you eat. And if you eat something that's going to stick to this villi, you're just going to have a bunch of starch slime all throughout these small cuts and not be absorbing any nutrients and having fermentation going on and having diazotrophs and all these other entities enter into the bloodstream, taking over your body. Cancer, lupus, diabetes, high blood pressure. O blood! O blood is a universal donor. Why is it a universal donor? Because it's non-antigenic to the other blood types. The other blood types are antigenic. Antigen is a code word for virus. They're foreign. So we don't have all the same blood, and we're not all the same. So quit singing We Are the World. AB and AB blood types are foreign. And what is on those particular blood types is starch. Think about that. All right. That we have blood distribution on the planet. So essentially what we're saying, notice that the highest distribution of O is in the place with the largest amount of water, the Amazon. Not the longest river. The longest river is the Nile. But the largest water aquifer on the planet and the largest plant life and jungle and animal life on the planet is in South America. It's the most pristine environment on the planet along the Amazon. So you see those factors in play. A natural food supply in fruits and vegetables, a natural water supply, lots of vegetation, which means high aerobic oxygenated atmosphere, and the sun beaming on you right in the tropics. That's called paradise, brothers and sisters. You see Africa coming up in a huge second, not surrounding the Sahara, the desert. 80 to 90% in sub-Saharan Africa and West Africa, O blood type. All right. So we see via the blood the state of the planet. Go look over in Asia and Europe. Look at what's happening. The numbers of the blood types start dropping. And the reason is because you get something called the ammonia transport system on their hybrid blood cells that is absorbing the ammonium. Think about this. All right, so I'm going to come out of this and come back to our homework assignment. All right. So if you can see what we're talking about, we can go back to our manual. Let's do that. We can go back to our manual and see exactly what's happening. Let's see if I got anything here that I want to go over. I do. I want to show these slides. All right, I want to show these slides. Give me a moment. From another presentation I was doing that was close to this one. Of course, we have the articles from Europe where they have these projects to block out the sun. All right, just so you can see it, so you won't think I'm making it up. It's there. All right, researcher lifts the lid on weather manipulation, and they're spraying sulfate particles in the sky to create man-made clouds, thereby reflecting sunlight back out into the space. White folks are trying to make this planet conducive for them to live on it because they are not naturally able to live on it. And we talked about this throughout history amongst original people. If you get the book Star Prophecy that I wrote, inside of it, when the Dogon were interviewed, Ogo, or Yorugu, the pale fox, ends up getting burnt away from creation by the sun because he was cut off from his placenta. And it says the transformation of Ogo's placenta into copper, remember the copper, the carbon in the copper, and then a burning star, the sun keeps him away from it. The transformation of the rest of Ogo's placenta. Now, I was at a pre-debate weigh-in with Polite, and he played a clip from Minister Farrakhan on Minister Farrakhan elaborating on the hair texture of black people, and that the tribe of Shabazz has nappy hair because it revolted against God and it was a curse, and that the natural hair type on the planet is straight hair. That's what he said. Now, the difference between the hair of Europeans and the hair of people like me and us is that our hair has more copper in it, so it coils because it is producing more electricity. And in doing so, and having the shape, geometric shape that copper is given as it binds to carbon, it allows for the hair to have attenuation power, and the hair becomes a mechanism as an electrical conductor to pick up on signaling more. All right? Which is why women are usually more intuitive and engineered to be more intuitive. So Ogo being cut away from copper is an ancient mythos describing something very real. The mutated biological pathologies are cut off from copper, and it has a big part in melanin production and the type of hair, etc. It's called endogenous copper. So the zinc and the copper levels is what gives us this beautiful nappy head. All right? And if it ain't nappy, it ain't happy. The transformation of the rest of Ogo's placenta into a burning star deprived him forever of the possibility of getting hold to it. So now Ogo doesn't like copper, and he is allergic to these burning stars. He can't get to what he wants to get to because of the stars. The sun and his motion in space will be entrusted to the Nomo D, who resides in Amma's sky at his side, Amma being the creator. On the earth, the heat of the sun will burn Ogo, transformed into the fox, so as to keep him from acting to dry him out. So a lot of people talk about these things. We don't have to theorize. All right, I just want to show a few things from here. All right, the original cross is actually an anatomical part of the brain, the circle of Willis. All right, so this is in your brain and central nervous system. The cardiovascular system, as it migrates to the brain, and the circle of Willis is where the Ankh comes from. And it deals with the level of oxygen in the brain, which is why in the glyphs you see here, 18th dynasty, air, aerobic. All right? All right, so when we think about disease, we're talking about mitochondrial respiration and aerobic versus anaerobic. Anaerobic is going to produce cancer. Aerobic is going to keep the cell healthy. Anaerobic is going to produce mitosis. Aerobic is going to keep the cell immortal. All right. So cancer is induced by spores. Spores are nitrogenous sulfur-based heterotrophs that are nitrogen fixated that induce ammonium conversion and alcohol conversion. Cellular apoptosis is caused by mitochondrial permeability transition pore, in which the cell energy cycle is disturbed, and basically the spores start eating up the mitochondrial engine. All right, so we need to understand that. Here's Otto Warburg. In his Metabolism of Tumors, he demonstrated that all forms of cancer are characterized by two basic conditions, acidosis and hypoxia. I would add in ammonidosius. Hypoxia is lack of oxygen. Lack of oxygen and acidosis are two sides of the same coin. Where you have one, you have the other. All normal cells have an absolute requirement for oxygen, but cancer cells can live without oxygen, a rule without exception. Dr. Otto Warburg is quoted as saying, deprive a cell of 35% of its oxygen for 48 hours, and it may become cancerous, which means it's trying to clone itself. Mitosis. Dr. Warburg made it clear that the prime cause of cancer is oxygen deficiency, brought about by toxemia. Dr. Warburg discovered that cancer cells are anaerobic, do not breathe oxygen, and cannot survive in the presence of high levels of oxygen. Cancerous tissues are acidic, whereas healthy cells, tissues are alkaline. Water splits into blah, blah, blah. That's my points I'm making. All right. So the nitrogen fixation cycle, you have certain plants that are nitrogen fixators, like mushrooms, like mushrooms, like mushrooms. All right. So we have nitrate toxicosis can occur through enterohepatic metabolism of nitrate to nitrate. That's dealing with the conversion in the liver. Nitrifying bacteria are chemoautotrophic or chemolithotrophs, depending on the genera. Now, what's happening here is a fancy way of saying high levels of urea, where at? In the liver, which is an exocrine and endocrine gland. You're going to throw your whole hormonal system off too. Urea is a nitrogenous-based, ammonium-based fermentation from the food that you eat that migrates itself from the small intestines into the portal vein, into the liver, excessively, repeatedly, eating them steaks, eating that chicken, eating that bacon, eating them fries, eating that, you're killing yourself. We can do better. All right? So we see that what I just described, the liver. You put drugs in your body, it goes into the gastrointestinal tract, goes through the portal vein right to the liver, right back out to the tissues. Problem. All right? So you see, benzothiazole has sulfur and nitrogen bonds, carboxylic acids that make melanin don't. So eumelanin over here, pheopigment right here. And we can describe it chemical for chemical. Benzothiazole is the chemistry that produces the pigment, the pheopigment. Carboxylic acids produce these refined shapes that we see here, that are being used in artificial intelligence and everything else. We have a problem. Sammy Sosa, why are you trying to bleach your skin? My brother, why do you have vitiligo? Because the spores in your body are so prevalent that your white blood cells can now eat your melanin because your melanin is deactivated. It's deactivated. And that's 99% of us. If your melanin is activated, you'll have a stark memory. Your thought process would be completely different. You'll be thirsty for life and not death. Discipline, order, progress, success. These are all signs of people who have activated melanin. And doing it in a way that you harm no one. All right, so you got your boy Obama in here. I'm not going to go over it. That's Dr. Kishe Morishita. He wrote the book Overcoming Cancer. That's his background, majoring in blood physiology. Dr. Morishita did his undergraduate work at Tokyo Medical University, where he graduated in 1930. In 1935, he received his Doctor of Medicine degree and was later appointed assistant professor of physiology at the same university. In 1937, he taught at the dental school of the university. In 1944, he became the technical chief in the Tokyo Red Cross Blood Center. Dr. Morishita is presently a member of the Physiology Association of Japan, president of the Life Science Association, and vice president of the New Blood Association. Author of the countless research papers for the academic community, Dr. Morishita has also written several books for the general public, including The Origin of the Blood Cell, Foundations of Physiology, The Degradation of Life, Blood and Cancer. We showed you the blood being made in the intestines. All right, I just want to make sure I covered everything that I wanted to touch on. I did. All right, so we need to know the power. We have people who've lived 256 years. All right, Li Ching-wen. This was recorded in the 1930s. Born 1677, passed 1933. In a 1930 New York Times article, Professor Wu Cheng-chi of the University of Chengdu discovered imperial Chinese government records from 1827 congratulating one Li Ching-wen on his 150th birthday. Time magazine, May 15, 1933. On Li's appearance, a factual account of the 250-year-old good luck man, where he described Li Ching-wen's appearance. He has good eyesight and a brisk stride. Li stands 7 feet tall, has very long fingernails, and a ruddy complexion. One of his disciples, Tai Juan Quan, Master Dao Li, told of Master Li's story. At 130 years old, Master Li encountered an older hermit over 500 years old in the mountains who taught him Bagua Zhang and a set of Qigong and breathing instructions, movements, training coordinated with specific sounds, and dietary recommendations. Dao Li reports that his master said that his longevity is due to the fact that I perform the exercises every day, regularly, correctly, and with sincerity for 120 years. So here's one of your children living to be 256. What about us? Practicing Bagua Zhang. You know what Bagua Zhang is? I've been talking Bagua Zhang all day. We know what this is. We know where it comes from. We know where it comes from. They can't fool us. So all we're saying is take back your legacy. That's all we're saying. Take back your legacy. All right. So we're going to come back to our manual. Let's shut that down. All right. Come back to our manual, and then we're going to get out of here. All right. Hopefully everyone can still hear me. I'm going to do one more screen share and look at some homework, and then we out of here. Kept y'all long enough. All right. So we have these definitions here: atom, molecule, cell, DNA, centromere, chromosome, autosomal DNA. We didn't talk about autosomal DNA. Autosomal DNA is the DNA in the nucleus. We prefer the term ONA because DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. ONA is proper because it keeps the oxygen receptors that need to be there and keeps it in a ribosomal fashion. RNA is where DNA came from. But what's happening is there are certain things, carboxylic acids, being removed. All right, factors being removed in the mitochondria. And those are nitrogenous fermentation processes taking place in that area. And we need to remove that. All right. So the RNA, ribonucleic acid, has a different formation. And then when you get to DNA, you got a different formation. All right. So some of these words you can look up and get a basic idea of it. We've covered enough. And now I want to talk about this lab, and then we can get out of here. Your lab assignment is to test foods. How you're going to test them is you need some mason jars from a dollar store or a smaller store, little small ones. And with those little small mason jars or sealable containers, whatever it may be, you might have a little glass like this or something that you can put a top on. All right. You're going to test the foods that you eat for 72 hours. If you eat flesh, cook it right up. Put it in that container, leave it there for 72 hours and watch what happens. Milk, put it outside on the container. Cheese, watch it for 72 hours. If it develops mold, fungus, yeast, and spores, those mold, fungus, yeast, and spores are a part of the cellular matrix. Cellular matrix of that particular entity, which means when you eat it, that's what happens. You're 98 degrees. What happens if you put some cheese outside for 24 hours in a 98 degree environment? You're going to get some problems. Brothers and sisters, we can test these foods now. Fruits, vegetables, cut them open. All right? Watch what happens to them. If it's an apple, you cut it open. It's supposed to turn brown, whatever. That's what you call oxidation. It's just releasing its electrons or its force. It's not fermenting. It's not sporing. It's not molding. If it does, it's a hybrid. It's a mutant. It's genetically altered. It's invaded. All right? So we need to understand that we can test every food, and we can test to see whether it's phototrophic or heterotrophic. Heterotrophic, leave it alone. Phototropic, eat it. All right? We don't even need a microscope to do that. We got the simple observation for spores, yeast, fungus, and mold. All right. Leaves don't mold when the fall comes. They fall off, turn brown, orange, black, go back into the earth, decompose, and keep the carbon-14 cycle going. All right, or the carbon cycle, as opposed to the nitrogen fixation cycle. The carbon cycle is the depreciation of carbon back into its another isotropic form, so it can return to the earth and it releases those electrons in there to the atmosphere. The force that it had attenuated. Very simple. All right, so wow, you're gonna follow that assignment on page 70. Send any questions that you have to isishealthmasters@gmail.com. Use online searches for your definitions. I did cover most of it today, but you can use your book from pages 46 on through. Start at page 1 and read through. There's some stuff that's just on herbs and plants, and recipes, which you won't have to read. But pretty much pages 46 through 69 give you your prerequisite information. All right. So, brothers and sisters, we are. Where are we? Right here. Stop the screen share. Come back. We're done. If we have any questions, let's see. All right. All right, so this video will be available. You'll be able to watch this. We're about to be done. I'm just going to peruse for some questions. Question, Ali. Now that chemtrails and hybrid vegetation plant growing are a constant source of atmospheric change, what are some of the best practices of developing safe indoor, outdoor plant farming? If you're in environments, the more rural, the better. If you're cultivating wild plants have the ability to sustain themselves. These are lineages of plants that have been through everything. So long before we inhabited these bodies, they were here and adapting to whatever was here, and they've been here. So we don't have to worry about them being wiped out. Plants are very intelligent. I'll give you an example. If you take a hybrid plant and plant it amongst wild plants, just somewhere in the woods, and come back and monitor it, what you'll find is that the wild plants will kill the other plant. They can choke it out. They can choke out the water, the electrical current. The plant has now been introduced into a whole electrical grid. So the wild plants are intelligent. They can kill any plant that's around them. What happens is when you clear out land and you introduce a whole bunch of hybrid plants, the roots are not long enough, and it's not having a symbiotic relationship with the ground, and it's producing higher levels of nitrogen. So what does the earth do? It creates a desert, drought. It dries you out. So we're not intelligent enough to destroy anything. You have these temporary periods, but we're wiping ourselves out. And we who are listening to white people, listening to white people, we're wiping ourselves out. So we don't have to make any extraneous plans. I mean, the proper fertilizers and things like that. If you're composting, you want to feed your plants, wild plants, you bag them up, keep water in the compost. If you got barrels, all right, composting helps. What you add to the compost helps, all right. You can add some Willer's water, valerian root, the other things that you can do. Let's go to the top and see if we got any questions up here, if I can get up there. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Okay, so if we don't have any questions, we're done. Thank you for your time today. Class 1 is done. You have your homework assignments. Vocabulary, basic lab, real simple. The homework assignments are going to get quite intense as we go on, and they will be much more difficult. They will require great thinking and using of the manual, but we'll be right here to help you. Thank you for your time today, family. Enjoy your day. If you're in Philly, go out to a Dune Day to support. We'll be in the building in New York tomorrow talking about how I made $100,000 online only, not counting the money I made offline, and how I can teach you to do the same thing. All right, so I'm going to bring the receipts to show you. 2 accounts, one 75, 76,000, the other about 20-some thousand dollars, doing different businesses. And the businesses, some of which I share freely with you. Financial recovery, all right? All aspects, I use that. The law services of ISIS Aboriginal Law Firm, the health services of Aboriginal Medical Association, all right? The cosmology services of the Ministry of Cosmology. We use all of those, and we made $100,000 online. All right, I was able to make that independently myself. So there's no way that we can't generate resources if we create a model that works for people. All right. People are sick. We create a model. We heal them. They contribute to us. We exchange. All right. People having problems with finances. We get rid of the encumbrances. Supply and demand. That puts us at the top of the list. People are having problems at law. We deal with nationality, put them in their proper framework, teach them how to contract so they don't have those problems anymore. They want to protect their property, their home, mortgages, assets, get away from being lien, get away from student loans, deal with the IRS. These are all lawful and legal remedy. They're having a relationship problem. We want to get to the core of the issue to see how it should function based on the cultural dynamic versus the countercultural. We can deal with Aboriginal psychology and cosmology and look at those particular things. We service all of those things. All right. I can make $1 million offline. I had the right team. All right. And multi-millions offline. But we need to learn these particular things so that we can help ourselves be in a better function. So Monday night, how I made $100,000 online only and made more offline, and how you can do the same in just 2 or 3 years. If you have a good business plan, you become a part of some of our models, or you borrow from the models and use them in areas where people need them. All right. All right, family. I think we're done for today. All right. I don't see any more questions. All right. So we're going to send y'all peace. We out for the day. Enjoy your day, family. All right.